What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Slate, the Thursday sports edition. I am Adam Kaufman. Jeff Ulrich will join us in just a little bit, but the man staying here throughout the entire show, none other than Colin Sherwin. Colin, good to see you, man.
Great to be here. I am live from New Orleans because Tampa is still not in great shape right now. So I'm a little evacuation. But you know what, Adam? The good thing about evacuating a hurricane to New Orleans is that they do have, and I mean this, the best fried chicken in the world here. Here's a little Willie Mays that I got for lunch today.
Oh, yeah. Look at you.
Phenomenal. You can't go wrong. So if you're going to be a refugee from a natural disaster, can I strongly encourage coming to a place with fantastic food, music, and culture and everything like that. So it could be a lot worse.
You're
let me tell
not
you.
all, piling into the Superdome or something like that. You're able to
Yeah.
spread out across the city at least.
17 years ago, I think it would have been a slightly different story here. That's for sure.
Yes.
But it's, you know what, you mentioned Hurricane anyone here, and they know, obviously, I was wearing a lightning hat yesterday, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're from Tampa." They figured out why I was here pretty quickly, and everybody could not be kinder and more thoughtful because what they've been through here changed this place forever. So yeah, if you ever need to get away from a natural disaster, they'll treat you right when you come to the city. That's for sure.
Well, I hope everything obviously goes well for you there. I hope first and foremost everything is good at home with your physical home and with your friends and family and loved ones. And that goes out to anybody that might be watching who obviously is maybe even in Florida or has family in Florida or is affected by what is going on in Florida, which is incredibly scary in any way, shape, or form. We thank you for taking a little bit of a reprieve here with us and finding alternative ways to spend your money, obviously, Colin. We'll get to the NFL and Thursday Night Football, which features a Florida team, the Miami Dolphins, taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. That game is in Cincinnati, not obviously in Miami. And by the way, the Bucs game is going to happen in Tampa this weekend. The NFL announced that. So things are on the upswing at least. But let's start college football because I know that is near and dear to your heart. What best bets do you have in mind? Where can you take us?
Boy, you know what? This board this week, I think, up until this week, I felt really good about my board going into each weekend. This weekend, I think it's a little bit trickier, a little bit tougher, and I'm going to be betting later, and I'm going to be betting injuries a little bit more than I have previously this season. Now, I had a great opening 3 weeks of the season. I got destroyed last week. Last week was my own personal Hurricane Ian because nothing could go right. Shout out to Syracuse for not covering, somehow being up 4 points to the spread with a minute left. Also shout out to Tennessee for literally not getting 1 yard and leaving the back door wide open in just ridiculous fashion and horrible clock management from Josh Heupel. I think is doing a great job at Tennessee, actually. So yeah, just a total complete disaster. Could not have gone worse. So this week, I think I'm going to be a little later to these lines, but the ones that I like so far, yes. Give me I really think this UNLV team might be for real. And there's still some 13.5 floating out there in the ether. If you can find some 13.5, 14. Marcus Arroyo has this team really going in the right direction. New Mexico hasn't showed anything but that they can play by the side of the road so far this season. This is not a good football team, and they're coming into a UNLV team that is now thinking about a bowl game. This is a win they got to get if they're going to get to their first postseason since, I guess, Oscar Goodman was mayor. So this is going to be a tough one for I think for New Mexico to find any way to cover. So I really like UNLV in this spot. Tonight's game with Utah State and BYU, I'm going to be a stay away here. But if I'm going to bet it, I'm probably going to bet under. It's 60.5 right now in most places. 60.5 at DK as well, I believe. That is correct. Yes, it is. And I do think that that's probably going to be the way to play this game. These are two teams on a short week in a game that has a little bit of rivalry to it. They are playing for the Beehive Boot, I believe is the trophy. There's a three-way trophy between. Now remember, Utah and BYU don't play this year, but normally it's a three-way rotation. And then if all teams finish 1-1, they vote on the winner, which is really kind of strange. They just sort of have an open vote. But these are two, Utah State's not great, but I think they're going to be able to hang around a little bit. So I would take if I had to on the line, but I don't think these teams are going to score a lot of points this week. And I don't think you're seeing anybody run it up the score. Kalani Sitake, when he gets the lead, sits on it pretty well. So I do like under in this game a little bit as well. If we're looking at some of the bigger games on the board this weekend, boy, this Kentucky game I think is just super interesting this week. I have no idea what to think here. Sometimes it's okay to say you don't know. And I think this is sort of the spot where I'm going, I really don't know what's going to happen here. There is just a lot going on for both teams here in terms of injuries. I think who might be the healthiest between Kentucky and Ole Miss will probably be the team that's going to be able to cover. And let me get the latest number here if I can. I think it's going to be
right
Ole
now.
Miss minus
Ole Miss
7. Yeah.
7,
Ole Miss minus 7. That sounds about right to me. Yeah, for me, if this gets on one way or the other, I think it's going to probably be the injuries that move it. This is going to be a tough one, but I think it's the game of the weekend in college football and something that you're really going to want to watch. If you're not being interrupted by Aaron Judge at bats while you're watching this game, because it is on ESPN, and ESPN has already said they're going to break into a really good college football game to watch Manfred Ball. Fantastic! I'm very excited as a huge baseball fan, obviously. But yeah, I think this game is super interesting. If it gets on either side of 7, I think there might be value, but that value might be because of the injuries on both sides of the ball. So keep an eye on that game, especially. And then my beloved alma mater. Normally, I try not to wear teams that I root for, but I'm a Hurricane refugee right now, so I'm going to indulge. USF is 8.5, I believe, right now. Yes, 8.5. Playing their home game at FAU this weekend. That decision was already made. Quite honestly, they could probably play at Raymond James Stadium this weekend. But unfortunately, the decision was made before the storm tracked to the east, and it's really not necessary to play this game 150 miles from campus, but that's what they're going to do. So I like ECU here, quite frankly. Just a little too much disruption for USF. It wasn't as big an imposition on East Carolina. And the Bulls just looked absolutely rollover dead against Louisville after a really good performance against the Florida Gators in the Swamp. They lost 41-3 last week, and it wasn't that close. I think this team is just not that good. I think they've sort of checked out a little bit after their blow-away performance here. You could see USF really get firebombed here. This is a ECU team that thinks they can play in a bowl game. Holt Nailers, look, he's no world beater, but he's consistent in the American Conference, in the middle of the American Conference. That's good enough. So I would lay up to 9.5 here, I think, against my alma mater. Sorry, guys, I'm still donating, but yeah, it's not been great. So those are the ones that jump out at me early. And yeah, and also give me a team total on Temple. With new quarterback Kurt Warner's son, who has taken over for the Owls this week. I think that they are a team, especially against the Memphis defense, that is the epitome of suspect. They'll be a team that I think you can see some over potential with. They should be able to score some more points with Warner instead of DeJuan Mathis, who's been benched. So that's kind of where I'm leaning right now.
Some of those earlier games that you had mentioned, and I was just kind of giving people a full look here on our screen share of the DraftKings Sportsbook and how games are looking this weekend. You see that Temple Memphis one right in the middle of your screen right now, 19-point favorites, Memphis at home. That's a good example as well, actually. Some of these games that have much larger spreads, and obviously they exist for a reason. It's based upon what we've seen so far, but whether you're looking at, you mentioned BYU, that game earlier, it's 24.5. Obviously the first game that you had mentioned, 13.5, UNLV in Mexico, New Mexico, pardon me. You got this game that starts in about an hour and a half, South Carolina State and South Carolina, just about a 40-point spread. You as a bettor, what's your mindset when you're going after some of these games that have not just double-digit spreads, obviously, but sizable double-digit spreads? Is there any hesitation on your part, or is that just for you a reflection of, well, obviously, one team is so much better than the other one. I may as well just be looking at it like it's a 7 or 8 or 10-point spread. It's just, we're basically seeing a top 25 level team against a Division III level team.
Yeah, I'm looking for key numbers there. When these numbers get this big, I'm trying to get on the right side of the key numbers. So for this UNLV tonight, I'm going to want to be on 14 or on 13.5 if it pops up. But that 14.5 is going to be a signal to me that maybe I need to be a little bit careful here. You're just looking for value in these spots. The bigger the spread, the more you're just sort of looking for value. These Alabama games where they're 40 and 45-point favorites, they actually don't perform super well in those games. Long term, they don't really cover a lot. And that's because they just sort of shut things down. When you're getting into that, 30, high 30s to even as high as 50 range, it's just sort of like whoever the defensive coordinator decides to stick out on the field in the fourth quarter is going to determine whether or not you win or lose your bet. Mm-hmm. When you're in that range, anything inside of 3 scores, anything inside 24, you're pretty comfortable in that you can find, as long as you can find some key numbers that you like, and you can get on the right side of them. I think that's usually a pretty good way. If the difference between being on one side of 21 and the other side of 21 on a spread is probably, more than enough to make up for the big, that's for sure. So get yourself on some key numbers, find some games early in the week where you see some 20 and a half that you think might go to 22 and get them early, and vice versa too. If you think some teams are a little bit high and some of the value might come down, bet the dog early, and see if you can start to have it claw back, especially with like Big Ten teams. The money does seem to come in a little bit late, so keep an eye on that. If you got a dog playing a Big Ten, especially with Michigan, Ohio State, those spreads tend to rise as the week goes along. So if you like the dog, you can be a little bit more patient. But if you like the favorite, you may want to jump early.
In general for you, and I'm going off of, some of the way that you explained some of the best bets that you had earlier when you were running down games, you were obviously fixated on the spreads, not so much either team or game totals. Is that just a column that you don't spend as much time looking at? You're more of a spread guy?
Well, I full disclosure, I am sort of rebuilding my model right now.
Okay.
And I am in the midst of, I just had a hurricane interrupt my full college model rebuild.
Yeah.
So I was actually the last piece that I'm still playing with is pace, and that will of course be the hugest thing that factors in over under. So ranking all through teams 1 through 131 on pace is something that, and how many plays per game you're getting, and then how that equates to EPA. I think is like those are the things that I'm looking at to try and factor this out. But quite frankly, I'm in the middle of a model rebuild right now. I think with the transfer portal, it was time to tear down the work that I had done over the last 3 seasons. Things have just changed so much in college football. The way the game is being called, I think, is a huge factor, because these PI calls on these one-on-ones on the outside are just getting ridiculous in college football. DBs glance the wrong way and they're getting called for PIs that quite frankly aren't pass interference. You got to let a little bit of contact go out there, and they're just not, and they're calling everything. And I think that really favors offenses. There are teams, West Virginia, that just love to throw the ball down the sideline and get some one-on-ones, and try and get, if they don't make the play, they're trying to make a call. And I think there are teams that are actually playing to this now that needs to be factored in. I don't think it's great for the sport. I understand it, but I think as a bettor, you've got to be aware of it, especially early in the season. I really liked unders going into this season. I thought with the changes in the portal, teams wouldn't have enough time to get up to speed, that the offenses would be behind the defenses early in the season, as they often are in the NFL. What I didn't factor in correctly, I don't think, was that in college football, we're not dealing with playbooks. We're dealing with play sheets. We're dealing with play pamphlets. Okay. These aren't super intricate. There's not John Gruden's 700 options and books this thick. One of my favorite players ever, Quentin Flowers, at this beloved alma mater. I think at one point he had 8 plays and 4 options off of them. That was it. It wasn't a playbook. It was literally like a laminated card. That was the playbook. You know what I mean? So you can install this pretty quickly. The air raid's always been an offense that famously Mike Leach installs in about 3 practices. So if you've got teams that have that, all of this turnover isn't really affecting them, because these players are just much more plug and play. That's less about system, and it's more about just, I got more raw talent than you. So that's something that I didn't factor in correctly during the season, or at least in preseason. And I think I'm starting to put that in a little bit now, and especially with the way the game is being called, points are going to be there.
Before we jump up to the pros in the NFL, which we will with Thursday Night Football in just a matter of moments here, you had mentioned just kind of in passing, Manfred Ball and Aaron Judge, the chase for 62 after he clubbed 61 last night, the AL and Yankee record tying 61st to match Roger Maris, and now he's got 7 games left to be able to get over the hump and make this record his own, which of course would be an American League record, not a Major League record, because there's no chance he's getting to 73 in Barry Bonds. People have their mixed feelings on, what is true and what is sentimental and what is legit and tainted and blah, blah, blah. But is this something you're into at all? And are you into it at all from a betting perspective, or is it just not really your scene?
So I grew up, baseball was my favorite sport. I was a season ticket holder for the Phillies when I was a kid. I memorized box scores religiously. One of my favorite teams of all time was the 2008 Phillies. I had, some family tragedy happen that year, and the thing that really pulled us all together was that amazing team. So I love baseball. My room when I grew up looked like a mini Cooperstown. It was unbelievable. I love baseball. I still love college baseball. I still watch a ton of college baseball. I went to the NCAA regionals last year. I still love the game, but the way the game is played now, just really like I am that guy who is just like totally checked out on baseball because of the three true outcomes and guys throwing 107 miles an hour. And, it's a lot of strikeouts. It's a lot of strikeouts. And so, yeah, it's a shame too, because like, there are some guys, I watch play in college that I see now in major leagues, and I root for them. And I think it's great, but like watching the product itself, while we're being honest here, like college softball, like great sport, root for the kids. Love, but sometimes like that, like College World Series softball, sure, but like regular season college softball, it's kind of unwatchable. There's a lot of
the Aaron Judge home run chase is not for you, is what you're saying.
Not for me. Root for him. Good luck, man. I hope you do it. That's kind of cool. 62, right? So it's the American League record he's chasing, right? So 62. Yeah, God bless him. Good luck. But like,
well, Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine once told us that chicks dig the long ball. What about you, Jeff Ulrich? Are you all about the long ball? Are you into this chase?
No, I really don't care.
My man.
He's in the middle. It's not going to break away from his screenings of She-Hulk.
Baseball lost me a long time ago. When my kids grow up and get out of the house and I get back into baseball betting, I'll be a baseball guy again. But
yeah,
I don't have time for home run races that take 160 days to form. Like, no, sorry.
It's a lot more days than that. That's just
I know.
Games. All right, let's talk NFL then, because we've got, 10, 15 minutes left. There are no Madden Sims tonight, though, just to make people aware. So if we go a little bit past 6 Eastern, we can do that. This game is, I guess at this point in time, 2.5 hours away. So there's plenty of time for people to consider their bets and their fantasy lineups. I do want to talk DFS in a little bit, but we'll start on the DraftKings Sportsbook, guys. And Jeff, we'll get your perspective first. This is our first foray into NFL. We've been on briefly baseball there with Colin, but mostly college football. So we're all getting into NFL together. Miami is in Cincinnati. The Dolphins, they're 3-0, although it has not been easy by any stretch. But the Dolphins, nevertheless, are one of only a couple perfect teams remaining. They are banged up, though. Tua Tagovailoa is hurt. Jalen Waddle is hurt. Xavier Howard, is hurt. You got the Bengals, who are favored now by 4 points. It was 3.5 when we opened the show. It's now 4 points the Bengals are favored by in the DK Sportsbook. And they're pretty healthy and fairly predictable in terms of how their offense runs. In fact, you could kind of make that argument on both sides of the ball here for this one tonight. The over-under 48.5. Jeff, what's your approach to this one?
At 4, I don't think that the Bengals are like a must bet or anything like that. I do like the Bengals side. The Dolphins come in. I've said this a couple times already, but the Dolphins coming in off like a long game against the Bills where there was a ton of plays just a couple days ago, and everyone's banged up, as you just said, whereas the Bengals are just out there playing the Jets. Like, it's a pretty big dichotomy in terms of what these teams are coming in for. So I think the line is correct at 4. I mean, I don't think you can discount the Dolphins any more than that. This is still a good team. They could certainly control the pace of it again. They're pretty deep squad too. So I'm not counting them out by any means and saying this is an unwinnable game or something like that. But I like the Bengals side. I just, at 4, it's a pretty big spread. I mean, we're past the 3. You can't really buy it down to 3. I think the total is a similar thing. It was 47 earlier in the week. Now it's up to 48.5. I think there's still a lot of scenarios where this game gets paced down by the running backs or something where I'm not betting the over at 48.5. And I don't know. I mean, you could certainly even think about the under, but I like the Bengals side. I do. That's where I would lean. For me, I'm more into like the player props right now, just in terms of what's out there. I think there's just a little bit better value, but yeah, that's how I'm looking at this game. I think that the Bengals are just going to be able to move the ball with Chase and Burrow, and I think it's just going to be a little bit too much for the Dolphins. And if the Bengals defense comes to play at all, kind of like they did last week, I think this will be tough for Miami.
While we're here, we got a little breaking news on a little college football if anybody wants to jump in. So Logan Bonner expected not to go tonight for Utah State quarterback. So that number, since we have opened the broadcast, and I said I like under 60.5, it is now down to 58. And also it looks like you are now seeing some 25.5 at DK. It was 24.5 when we opened here, and I think it might even get as high as like 27-ish without Bonner out there because Utah State's not great. So just keep an eye on that if you're betting college football tonight.
Appreciate that note. And yeah, people be mindful. Check out, see what's still on the board right now. May have already been pulled down that game, but do look at
it is live right now. It is up right
Okay.
now. Yeah.
All right. Well, perfect. Hop on and place your bets and do it in a hurry. But Colin, this game tonight, this NFL game, do you share the same view as Jeff here, where you like Miami, but you're not sold on Miami, and you just think this is going to be more of a walk here for the Bengals?
So I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle here. So I think I got some friends who work in and around that Dolphins team, and they are one of the more interesting organizations, I would say, in all of professional sports, top to bottom. But Mike McDaniel is a really different kind of coach. He's brought a really different kind of culture to that team. If anybody is just going to sort of do something weird tonight, it might be Mike McDaniel. Yeah. And that might be, we're going to try and throw bombs because we want to either get our offense or defense off the field as quickly as possible, especially with Jalen Waddle questionable and Tua a little dinged himself. They may put some different types of things in to just sort of protect their players that they have on a 3-day turnaround after a brutal game against Buffalo. I wouldn't be surprised to see if they sort of scheme to what is happening here, which is going on the road and trying to win is really, really difficult on a 3-day turnaround, especially after what they went through in a divisional game. For a non-divisional game, maybe they just sort of like go, hey, we're gonna throw the ball in the end zone every time. And if they catch it, great. And if they don't, maybe we'll get a PI call. And if they don't, all right, well, we'll punt. Just sort of try and navigate this game a little bit differently instead of trying to run the ball and be physical, because that's probably not your best way forward to keep your team healthy all season if you're doing that on a 3-day turnaround. So something to think about. I don't have any insider information. I am completely projecting here, but I think that it's possible that the Dolphins just sort of go, all right, we're going to throw it and see what happens.
When I look around the NFL, guys, I really like Mike McDaniel, because when I'm looking at the 32 coaches, he's just the one that I really zero in on. Maybe it's because he's a younger guy too, although he's not alone in that category. I look at him and this is a guy that I could be friends with. Yeah. just a big sports fan, nerdy, a numbers guy, a sly, sarcastic wit. Like he's my people. Mike McDaniel's the kind of guy that I feel like I could hang out with.
100% agree. And we need more like smart, interesting guys like that, having a bunch of like ex-players that, that just sort of like grinded their way up, God bless Dan Campbell. Sure, he's a wonderful fellow to have a beer with, but we need some different kind of voices in the NFL, and having a different kind of voice in McDaniel, I think and guys like Sean McVay as well. Super interesting. So yeah, totally. We'll see what happens tonight.
Moose, you mentioned, you're more intrigued by player props tonight. What jumps out at you?
Yeah. So one thing about the Bengals, they're actually a fairly easy team to predict. And we saw this last week. I mean, the Jets running backs were it's mainly Breece Hall, and they're tight ends as well. Like the middle of the field, the Bengals will give up just yards, just easy catches. And, Chase Edmonds, I know he's in kind of a timeshare here with Mostert, but I really think that you're going to see, it's going to be a little bit up and down each game, but don't be shocked if Edmonds just gets a ton of dump offs in this game, because if this one does get out of hand, if Tua's getting banged up, if nothing's working, we could just see Miami trying to play some quick catch up at the end of the game. Maybe they just use it as a game plan too, and think this is how we're going to move the ball and, catch them off guard. But I really think Edmonds over 2.5 catches at plus 145, that's a really juicy number, man. I mean, this is a player who exceeded 3 catches, probably on, I don't have the exact stats up here, but in his time with the Cardinals, and even through 2 games, he's already exceeded that once. So with the Dolphins, I think that's a great betting number you're getting there. And then 13.5 receiving yards, way too low. So Chase Edmonds in a game where they're by the dip here. I mean, it's a 1-game sample where Mostert took a little bit more carries. Edmonds isn't going anywhere. He scored 2 touchdowns last week. He's still the better receiver. I like buying into his receiving props a lot. That's just one area. And again, I'm just taking advantage of the matchup here too. Play this Bengals defense with tight ends and wide and running backs against the pass all year, because they proved it last week, and they've kind of proved it for a year now. That's just the part of the field they just don't defend.
So in the time that we have, guys, I want to focus in on DFS a little bit, because obviously, we got the $2.5 million Thursday Night Millionaire contest, $1,000,000 going to first place. There's already eyeballing this thing, about 108,000 people that are in. More going to climb in the next 2.5 hours, obviously. And again, you got a shot at $1,000,000. Like, this is, you'd have to have one heck of a bold, fancy single game parlay to place a $15 bet to come out with $1,000,000 on the other side. So, why not obviously take your shot? And I just, what fascinates me about this game, and I haven't done my lineups yet, but I'll be building lineups, not for that contest, but for, for other contests before, this game gets going. And I'm looking at it and saying, all right, what is the strategy here for this game? How do you want to go about stacking it? If you are a Miami believer, do you want to stack, let's say, is it going to be, Tua and Waddle or Hill, and then you mix in a cheaper guy, a Mostert's $4,400, or a Mike Gesicki, the tight ends? Obviously, these are two defenses that have allowed, both defenses have allowed a ton of production to the tight end spot this year. On the other side, if you think it's going to be, you want to go like Tua and then all Bengals stack, and you want to go Burrow and Chase and Higgins or Boyd, and then put in Hurst or something like that. If you're trying to decide what to do on the Miami front, a fascinating thing, depending on how banged up you believe Tua is, obviously, do you fade Tua, but you put in both Hill and Waddle, because you figure, like, based on the numbers, what we've seen this year, those are the only two guys for the most part that are getting the ball in that Miami offense when Tua's throwing it. So, Colin, what would your, game script be in terms of how you would go about building a lineup, you think?
So I am, for some reason, on the, oh, there it is. It finally popped up. So I was on the hotel Wi-Fi and I couldn't even get in to see the list.
We got it for you. I got it on our screen share anyway for you.
No, hang on one second. All right. So if we're going to scroll down, because we're going down the board here. We're going way down the board. You know what? You win and lose fantasy in major contests by finding the guy down the board that can get it going and make some plays. So
I'm not sure any of those $200 guys are going to be your answer tonight. I
don't think they're going to be real helpful. No, I mean, we can go down the board, but I don't know if we want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you're probably looking at. And I don't know what you think, Jeff. It feels like the cheapest impact plays tonight are going to be more like in the 1,000+ range, right?
Yeah, like with a Durham Smythe or a River Craycroft. I mean, that, like the tight ends, like
a Chris Evans, maybe.
I mean, Chris Evans is one touch all year. I mean, that's even really thin.
Alec Ingold, yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I think it's more like a Smythe, or these kickers are going to be in play, obviously, in the showdown format. But
I think,
what do we think?
I think the Bengals defense is a little bit interesting as well. They showed up a little bit better pressure again, like we're talking about Tua being a little bit banged up, and if he's in a situation where he's got to throw the ball more, I think that's valid. But yeah, there's not much like cheap value, which again leads me to Chase Edmonds as being like a potential, instead of going 2 wide receiver deep with Tua, I'd probably bypass Waddle just because of the injury concern. I like Colin's idea that there's probably going to be some attempts to Tyreek Hill, and I think there's a lot of scenarios where Tyreek Hill still gets there, whether it's garbage time, whether it's just trying to play catch up, Miami just coming out with a different approach. So Hill is fine, I think. But yeah, on the other side, I mean, if I'm looking to stack pass catchers, I'm going to take a bit of a different stance. I might even look at Mike Gesicki tonight just to be different. Everyone's like, again, I don't think that the snap count with Mike McDaniel is a week-to-week thing that you're going to be able to rely on, but at least with the secondary players. Yeah, Hill, Waddle, we know that's fine. That's every week. They're the main targets, but like Edmonds, Gesicki, some weeks I think they're going to play like 17 snaps. Some weeks I think they're going to be like every down players. And I think you buy into that, especially against this Bengals defense, which is not good against those positions anyways. So those are two players like I think you can take real stances with tonight. You can play them as part of a Bengals stack as like, a comeback play. Like I said, you play maybe Hill and Gesicki with like, Mixon as your captain or Jamar Chase as your captain. And then, on the other side, I mean, I guess you could make, I'm not into Miami stacks, but it's certainly, something you could look to as well. You could play Tyreek Hill and the captain with Tua and Edmonds or something like that as part of like a Miami full on attack. So different ways to play it, but those are, Hill is the guy I want to pay up for in Miami. But I think Edmonds and Gesicki make for really interesting plays tonight. I think one of them is probably going to have a far better game than the public is like, thinking.
Don't forget too, you got that Tua Eli Apple drama during the week where, he just basically says he's going to light him up. We'll find out, obviously, if he gets the ball, gets the opportunity to do
Eli
it.
Apple just really needs to like shut up. I mean, that guy's already talked himself out of one city. Like, I don't know why on earth, like, what do you, anyways,
What about Joe Mixon?
You're neither here nor there.
What about Joe Mixon? He's not cheap, obviously. He's $9,000 in the flex, but are we? It seems like just such a great spot for him. Not only obviously out of the backfield as a runner, but as a receiver.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, again, if I like the Bengals, I mean, one path to Bengals victory is just, the Bengals take a lead. They get Mixon going. Maybe they get a couple turnovers, and all of a sudden, like, Mixon is up to like 25 carries here. I don't think that's necessarily the best way to attack the Miami defense, but it's not necessarily the worst way to do it either. They've given up big yards per attempt, big yards per play. It's been mainly to the wide receivers. So like Chase would be my preferred captain here for sure. But like there's that like Mixon, if you are playing Mixon as a captain, that leads to other scenarios too, like perhaps the Cincinnati defense being a play. Maybe even fade Burrow in that spot. I think that's probably a good way to go about it. Maybe even fade both quarterbacks in a Mixon spot because it's just going to be a pace down game, right? Yeah. And you just go with pass catchers, just getting there for volume. So Mixon is definitely a captain's candidate. It's a beautiful game for Showdown because there are a lot of different combos and a lot of different ways to approach it. Whereas, it feels like the last two games, it was like, okay, like you have to play these guys because there's not going to be any points from anyone else. And then it's just mixing, matching the rest. This one could go so many different ways. It's interesting from a lot of perspectives.
Yeah, the fade strategy would be interesting. Go ahead, Colin.
I was going to say that, if you're looking for somebody who might be able to step up in this spot, especially if Miami is going to try and focus on taking away the talent at wide receiver, look for maybe like a Mitchell Wilcox at $900 in the middle of the field. He's got 2 catches this season, but at $900, if they're going to really spread this offense out.
That's a captain, 600 in the flex.
Oh, 600 in flex. Yeah. I mean, pennies, like literally couch cushion change here. Might be the kind of guy who, throws the ball over the middle. I get a test. I saw him in college. This guy can catch the ball over the middle. So, I mean, it's just opportunities. I haven't really been there, but find a guy who maybe if you're trying to go with a counter strategy and you think the Dolphins are going to really try and double up and take away wide receivers, Mixon and Wilcox would seem to be two guys that would be able to be, the beneficiaries.
Especially in a Mixon captain lineup. I like that because if you're captaining Mixon, it probably means the wide receivers are getting low volume anyways. So yeah, like it's probably going to be a more viable strategy. Like maybe even Chris Evans and like a Mixon, again, like just players are going to get you a couple catches.
Didn't you mock me on Chris
dear
Evans?
God, if Wilcox actually gets a touchdown, I mean, like, holy cow, you're
free money.
Free money. Absolutely. All right, gentlemen, I'm being told it's time to go, but do either of you have any parting thoughts? All right, good.
I have tons. First of all, keep an eye out for everybody down in South Florida right now. There's plenty of people. I tweeted out some great organizations that you can send some money to if that's something that you're interested in. But also, this is going to be a great weekend of college football. I know Jeff doesn't care because he's Canadian, and I know Adam, he's fine in power rates. But let me tell you, if you love the best sport, this is a great weekend for the best sport. Ole Miss, Kentucky's going to be a murder. It's going to be so fun.
I don't dislike college football the way I have, I'm bored with baseball. I just don't have time for it on Saturdays. But my two thoughts are go Davis Riley at the Sanderson Farms Championship.
There you go.
And also, what were those people doing on the Judge home run ball yesterday? You got to get down there.
By not jumping over to get the ball, you mean?
That's like, we're talking 6 figures lying at your feet. You take the jump. You take a sprained ankle and you get the ball. What are you doing? Go down there. They can throw you out. They can't take the ball
broken
away.
leg and getting arrested if you come away with ball 61.
What are you doing?
Hey, Moose,
there's 6 figures on the floor. My God.
Oh, you have to do it. Yeah, $2 million. I heard the number was like $2 million that somebody was offering. Moose, before we get out of here, we got one thing we got to cover.
Okay.
All right. Keegan Bradley's in the house at -2, leaders at -5, and Sam Burns is on 18 and he's at -2.
Okay.
Get in there. Okay. There is nobody ahead of them. Nobody ahead of him. Keegan's going to close strong and like give it away. top 5. Like, lock it in. Just lock. This is the Keegan Bradley top 5 invitational. That's what this is right here. And give me some Sam Burns to repeat. If you didn't get it before the tournament, you get it now at an even better price.
That I agree with. I don't know about the Keegan take, but the Sam Burns, you got to look at his number after this round. He's only a few shots back. It's the perfect start slow. He'll probably shoot 61 on Sunday or something. So
yeah, for sure. There's a gift.
Fellas, I love you both almost as much as I care for Daniel, our technical director, and Eamon, our producer, and all of you out there watching. Remember, the sweat comes your way 11 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, which means tomorrow, not only a recap of Thursday Night Football, but a full look ahead to both the college football weekend and the main slate coming up on Sunday in the NFL. And tomorrow night, right around the same time as this one, 5:15 Eastern, you will have the slate. Once again, looking ahead to the weekend. So we thank you for hanging out with us over the course of the better part of the last hour. We thank everyone who was part of the show. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.